Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between. Welcome to another episode of Tuned Into Tennis. I am your host, Myles David, and today we are going to have basically a mosh pit of conversations that lead us into this year's U.S. Open. But before we get directly into the U.S. Open, I'd like to take a step backwards into what has been, because tennis moves so quickly, and talk about the 2024 Paris Olympics, specifically the tennis event. And I figured what better way to talk about that than to talk to somebody that was actually on the grounds and somebody I'm quite jealous of. They got the opportunity to experience that. And I'm talking about none other than Mr. Brennan Marshall, who was live and in direct on the grounds at Roland Garros for the 2024 Paris Olympics. And we're going to have a chat about his experience, how that has led us into the North American hardcourt swing, and also have a chat about the U.S. Open. So buckle up for what I think should be interesting chit chat between myself and good friend and first time on the podcast, Mr. Brennan Marshall. Let's bring Mr. Brennan Marshall up. Hi, Brennan.
Myles, I feel like this is a bait and switch because, you're talking about has been, and then you're inviting me on. So I'm not sure if that really means that I am the has been here, but I would assume not. But no, really excited, to been here. A huge fan of the pod and show, and tune in when we can. So I know when we first started talking about this, the world looked a little bit different. We had a different, Democratic presidential candidate. I'm sure hopefully everyone on your podcast has been glued to the DNC this last week. I know I have. But really excited. So coming off a great week and excited to talk with you.
Yeah, I think the DNC has been quite eventful for a bunch of different reasons. And eventful would be the word that you would use to describe your Olympic experience. Would it be a good word to describe that?
Yeah, no, I think, that is one word. It honestly blew me away. I'm a big Olympic fan, not just of the tennis. Hopefully folks were able to watch it. Paris did such a great job of incorporating the city actually into the events. I'm sure everyone, saw some articles where, Paris wasn't as busy as they thought it was. A lot of the Parisians got the heck out of town. And people that maybe normally were going to Paris didn't. So honestly, it made for a great fan experience. We're able to get to, multiple events. And, as a tennis fan, it doesn't get better than, holding the Olympic event at one of the sites for, the Grand Slam. So it was great.
I think that's the coolest thing. I think it hasn't happened all that often. I know it happened at Wimbledon in the 2012 Olympics, but like when it's actually held at a venue that tennis kind of reveres and actual tennis happens every year, that gives it an extra spark, just in the realm of the sport of tennis. I mean, I watched so many other different sports. I mean, the traditional, gymnast and track and field,
Sure.
But swimming, diving, fencing, what else did I watch? Well, I'll let you talk about some other things that you may have watched besides tennis, but it's just like, even though we're a couple weeks away from the Olympics, it still feels like I have FOMO, or like,
yeah, sure.
What am I doing with my life after the Olympics, and I have to wait 4 more years for this?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm sure we all saw on Instagram a lot of those memes of, what do I do with my life now that the Olympics are over? Maybe actually then it is good that the DNC happened, because now I feel like, what am I going to do with my life now that the DNC is over, besides get people to vote and donate? But
or be upset that Beyonce didn't perform.
I know. I thought it was going to be a, Taylor Swift with Beyonce and maybe George Bush on backup, but maybe there's still time.
That's a combo.
Right. There just was something so special about it. And, it had all of the, kind of ambience of a Grand Slam with kind of lesser crowds. So, you had some of the top players, instead of all the way on the practice courts, we're practicing just on the smaller courts. So, I talked to Danielle Collins for a couple of minutes, and she was great. Took a picture with me. I saw Sam Stosur. There just kind of were all these players that, for those of us that geek out to tennis, they're just walking around. And so a lot of them seemed surprised that I wanted to take a picture of them, but it was great, saw, which I hope is not, but probably was, Rafa's last match, professional match, maybe, at least at the, French Open. Saw him play with Carlitos, which, I felt like a little bit of a bad American because I was, rooting for the Spaniards, but, it was great to see some doubles players actually win. Saw Andy Murray's last match, which, that couldn't be better. Saw Andy Kerber's last match. So, kind of if I think about, some different themes from there was the weather. I cannot tell you how warm it was, legends, all these legends of the game that, were retiring there either officially or unofficially. You and I have talked about this and I've ranted into the wind. Why do they not play third sets out for doubles? It is one of my pet peeves. Doubles is such a great game. We're trying to grow the sport of tennis. And not only will we not give it time on TV, we won't even give it time when they're playing on their own on court 10. Can someone please describe? I mean, no wonder doubles isn't as popular. We're not giving it a chance.
I see that perspective, because in order for tension to build, sometimes you do, like you said, need time for that to happen. And what better way under that lens to give it time than to play a full third set out? But I do think there's something very hit it or quit it, or maybe that's not the best verbiage. Maybe there's something very
this is kind of a gay podcast, so hit it and quit it could be your tagline.
There's tension still in the fact that you only have a limited amount of time to win this match. So I look at it that way too. I don't mind it. Now, if I was obviously people that play tennis recreationally, we play more doubles and singles if you just pick up a racket and go to your local park, right? In my shoes, I would not like the sudden death play a tie break of it all, because it does kind of makes your shoulders rise kind of for that whole 10-20 minutes or whatever. But from a fan perspective, where you're watching, you're kind of on the edge of your seat, because you only have so much time to get these rallies together, and every point matters. So I feel like from that perspective, I don't mind that they go to the super tie break best of 10 in doubles at the Olympics.
I mean, it is good that they at least go to 10, because if you start out poorly, there is time for you to still get it back. But if you go back through the draw, and especially if you look at the American women, they all were losing in that third set tiebreak, which doesn't mean that they necessarily deserved to go further. But you just look at those matches, and there would have been a different podium, in my opinion, if they played out that third set. Now, you can also make the argument, would Rafa have played if it was best 2 out of 3, with his body? So I can see in general, why you might do it, but, to be, front row, doubles is just so exciting, and it's just a completely different game than the singles. So playing 2 out of 3 isn't as hard on your body. So anyways, we can move on. I could talk about this particular subject for an hour, which I'm sure no one wants to hear, but it just was exciting. It was electric, and because Roland Garros has the facilities, the fans turned out, and again, having Rafa there, having Andy there. It was sold out, and tickets were hard to get. So it was, great to see as a lover of tennis.
Speaking of tickets being hard to get, let's go back for a second. Brennan, I know we share a group message together, and we talk about tennis nonstop. You more so than others, I think. I think actually we both contribute well to that group message. But you're the one that kind of brings the effervescent and spice to it.
Chaos.
We can use the word chaos. I feel like we talked about the Olympics, and then you kind of just showed up in Paris, and I had no idea that you were going to be there. So how the hell did you get to Paris for the Olympics? I would love to know that, and I feel like people listening would like to know that too.
Yeah, no. So, luckily I actually was over in Europe for work, so there was already a little bit of that, excuse. And when I first thought about the Olympics a year ago, I just went, gosh, there's just no way it's going to happen. You have to fly there. That's a flight. Oh, the accommodations is going to be so expensive. Oh, the tickets are going to be so expensive. And honestly, we just got online and did a little research, and it really wasn't too bad. I mean, it still, obviously was very, special, but we booked it 6 months ago. We didn't book it a year ago. And I think, prices came down perhaps because, they were too expensive at the time. and I know we're going to get into the US Open a little bit later, but tickets to the Olympics for the medal rounds were half expensive as what they are for the second round of the US Open. So, looking at, it was more, affordable. And again, depending on what event you went to and depending, what round it was doable. Again, it was special and is very much bucket list. So we're seeing there, was lucky enough to go to the beach volleyball. As I was saying earlier, could Paris have done a better job of incorporating the actual city into the events? So it just worked out, and it was fan friendly. You were able to get tickets last second, and it's going to be interesting. What happens in LA. I hope LA does more than just Tom Cruise swinging around, from a plane. God love him. I have to think, and maybe they've announced this, but will tennis be at Indian Wells? I have to think that's where they're going to play it.
The conversation has already started, and it started right after the Olympics closed. But I saw some visible names like Andy Roddick in his own podcast say that it wouldn't be a great match because of the heat in Indian Wells, which that's not a great excuse for me. But I also I like Indian Wells because I was lucky enough to go pre-pandemic when no one even was considering coronavirus as a thing. I went in 2019 and it was absolutely beautiful. But I have to say, in the years that have passed from just being like a analyst or armchair analyst, I guess, because I don't get paid to do this yet.
But you don't get paid yet. You don't get paid yet. This podcast might actually propel you into the next level. So we'll see.
Fingers crossed. I'm not the biggest fan of the speed of the courts and the conditions. Like the tennis itself, like if from a fan perspective of being able to see the fans, or see the athletes close up, the overall vibe is just absolutely beautiful. The mountains, the colors of the court, just the fact that it's like warm but not too warm in that March time frame, and it gets cooler towards the evening. I loved all of that, but the speed of that court is going to feel like they're going to draw out the Olympics forever. And there's 4 years from now to kind of make all of that work out. And as I just said this, I think someone else brought into the conversation what is it? Carson? Isn't Carson like a suburb or like a part of LA?
Yeah,
somebody mentioned that there was a tennis tournament there that used to be held traditionally, like a part of the US Open series. No, not Carlsbad. It was I feel like I'm falling on the word Carson for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but there's like a facility.
We'll edit this part out so we don't sound dumb.
Hey, they know we're not scientists. We're just tennis fans.
Yeah. Well, there used to be, the US Open hard swing specifically, for women was that whole, Southern California. Bringing me back to, my favorite days of, Monica Seles, Venus Williams, Lindsay Davenport, Mary Pierce, all the, as Mary Krillis says, Big Babe Tennis, was all those great, tournaments. I know the men used to have a tournament, UCLA, and in Southern California. There's nothing but tennis court. So it will be, interesting to see, where they go. And, again, during the Paris Olympics, they had football, soccer all around the country as they were doing it. Obviously they had the surfers in Tahiti and, so it will be interesting to see how much of the state, the surrounding area that, Los Angeles chooses to avail itself.
Maybe we'll have some competition in Oregon or something. Who knows? I'd like to see it.
Know.
That's not that far. Same time zone. It might work out.
Sure.
Okay. Speaking of workout, you mentioned a couple cool run-ins with athletes. Anybody that you kind of stopped and watched working out at practice that either looked hot to you or just like is like now emblazoned in your head, like, wow, I can't wait to see them again if I get a chance to?
As I mentioned, it was a very, very warm Olympics. You know, when athletes are running around in the heat, they tend to sweat a little bit. I think all of today's, you know, and again, I think, you know, perhaps this podcast leans towards the LGBTQ plus homosexual population that all the top men know what they're doing. All the top men know their audience. All the top men know their bodies well and what fits and what doesn't. You know, gone are the days of, you know, and I love, you know, Andy Roddick, and obviously besides being easy on the eye, his politics and his insight, can't say enough. You know, but gone are the days of the shirts that you have to pull up the sleeve, you know, before you serve. So, you know, Musetti, you know, I saw 3 of his matches because he went all the way to the bronze, knows what he's doing. You know who it surprised me a little bit was Taylor Fritz. You know, he was a very, you know, good-looking gentleman, and I was like, all right, Taylor, all right, Hugo Boss. Like it was working. I saw Taylor's loss to Musetti, and you know, it just was, you know, I wanted to clap for the beauty of men. It's pretty, you know, and yeah, then tennis was secondary type thing. But no, everyone was looking good. And you know, again, one of the other podcasts out there that talks about, you know, the lead, you know, the leader of the short shorts brigade, you know, who won the gold medal in mixed doubles, Czech Republic, of which, you know, is he dating Suniakova? Isn't he dating Suniakova? Are they together? Are they not? You know, that was another kind of cool story.
Yeah, Thomas Match and Siniakova, that was a trending story at the time, but it kind of has cooled off, I guess, because since then they've both went on their respective ATP and WTA tours. But I think they, in my opinion, for that time of the Olympics, which I can't blame them, I think they kind of played it up a little bit more, just because when else are you going to get opportunity to play with your countrywomen who you may have been dating and sleeping with and go on to win a gold medal? And then afterwards, kind of like, hey, well, you know, we may do our own thing. Maybe this relationship fizzles out. Who knows? But in that moment, we're always going to have that. We're always going to have those memories. So I feel like, you know, they're 20-somethings playing sports professionally. Why not have fun in that week at the Olympics in Paris, the city of love, allegedly?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And honestly, it was just really, you know, really great to see, you know, and actually that was at that, the gold medal match against the Chinese. And, you know, that was the one medal match I saw where they actually raised, you know, the flags. And then, you know, the Canadians came bronze with, you know, Felix, add him to the list as well as, you know, someone that we know is big. And then in person, he's big. He's
a tall guy. Yeah.
And, you know, it was just so cool, you know, to see those flags being raised. And you could tell they just, you know, they both were so proud of their country, of each other. You know, we're just so enjoying the moment. And so, you know, regardless of kind of where they go from here, it was, you know, really fun to see that. You know, I maybe have been around the block before and have, you know, exes, and, you know, I'm not sure I could get out there for, you know, a week and, you know, enjoy that time necessarily the same. So, you know, it's just, it's great to see. And again, one of the reasons why I love the Olympics, all of these stories about these athletes, and, you know, you have everything from, you know, growing up and the parents had to work 3 jobs just, you know, and driving, you know, Simone to and from practice at 2 a.m. to, you know, 10 p.m. And then, you know, the female water polo where, you know, Flavor Flav for a while was helping fund them. Because, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of people at the Olympics. I'm not sure I expected to, you know, be seeing as the face of the Olympics. He was one so universal that, you know, how can you not get into the Olympics? And I feel like I'm talking a lot, but, you know, I guess that's a little bit while I'm here. But, you know, one of the other, I actually will say, bringing it back to tennis, that was a bit of a bummer was, you know, all the top players that elected not to play. And, you know, as someone who is a huge fan of the Olympics, you know, there were some notables that I want, especially the American men, you know, that didn't play, whether it be, you know, Tiafoe, Ben Shelton, you know, and some others from other countries. And that said, Dan Evans chose from the UK chose to play, and he played, with Andy Murray in doubles. His ranking dropped 110 spots by playing in the
Significant, very significant. Yeah, because he was a defending champion in DC that was happening at the same time that the Olympics were happening. Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, tennis, as I'm sure we all know, it's too long of a calendar. And I think probably every 4 years, the powers that be do talk about how can we time this better. But, it is a shame that, we went obviously from the clay to the grass, back to the clay, and then you go right into the hard courts. And, so I think it was a little bit, too bad, but I think we're always going to run into this problem, and I'm not really sure how to address it. But it's a bummer when, players are kind of looking at the math, and depending where you fall, are you really trying to win that next Grand Slam, or are you just on the cusp of being seeded and not seeded? So if you choose to go to the Olympics, maybe you get Novak or Coco first round. So, but that was a bit of a bummer. But at the end of the day, I can understand, everyone has, their different priorities, but,
it's a lot to juggle. It really is a lot to juggle. Which leads me to another question I had for you about the Olympics. Were you able to bring anything back from the Olympics? Like, I know obviously you weren't an athlete. I wish we were. So you didn't actually get a chance to compete for a gold medal, but is there any kind of like memento that you're able to bring back from Paris?
I mean, I'm drinking out of a glass. I've got my 2 hats here and my good old program. So
is it thick? Is it like a thick brochure, or it's like just a couple pages?
No. It's a good old. It's soft cover, so it's not a coffee table book, but it's pretty good. So they go through each of the sports and show you, kind of what are the highlights for the Olympics going in. Of course, the tennis story that they feature is around Novak, for obvious reasons.
Should we stop there and kind of get your opinions? Ooh. The deadly arch of silence on a podcast. It never bodes well.
I know. I mean, all right. So for Novak's
in his injury, in his gold medal that he got in singles finally.
So I think he kind of can be all the above. I guess my mom taught me that the internet can live forever. So I'm going to try to do some of my answers a little bit politically correct. And, just Novak, for me has never been my big player to watch. I think, it's undeniable that he is the best person to ever pick up a tennis racket. I mean, at this point, I don't know how anybody, denies it. The players I tend to be the ones that don't scream at ball boys, that don't hit lines people in the throat with balls, that believe in science. Those are the players that I tend to root for.
Fair.
And I mean, how can you doubt how much it meant to him? Playing for Serbia, you saw his reaction, hugging his family. Every other human being that's ever had this type of surgery didn't get back on the court for 4 to 6 weeks, let alone competing. And, he was on the court within 2 weeks, was, 3 out of 5 getting into a Grand Slam and then winning a medal all within 7 weeks. So, So, I mean, what do you say? What do you say to that? What do you say to that?
I think he prioritized all year ramping up his tennis to get to that gold medal moment, which I can't, like, from an athletic standpoint. Yeah, from an athletic standpoint and like prioritizing where you want to peak, I respect it. Like, similarly to you, I can't say how many times I've like ran to my television to watch a Novak match. That number is incredibly small. But
I only have when I've heard he's down like a break in the fifth, or he's down 2 sets to love. Then I'm Jackie Joyner fucking Kersey running for it, but yeah, I hear you.
I'm definitely going to clip that and make that into a little short reel. Cause I mean, like, a lot of people fall on our side of the fence, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people do find him endearing, and those people tend to be
weird.
Oh, well, hey, I didn't say that, everybody listening, but you did, and I'm going to just allow you to roll with it. Something that was on the opposite side of weird, something that actually was endearing to me, was the women's singles gold medalist in Jing Chen-wen. I really enjoyed watching her arc to kind of really sitting amongst the elite in women's tennis. And people, there's always debate about, like, does the gold medal matter? And like watching somebody who was kind of on the precipice of relevancy in women's tennis. She had been to a final just this year. Some of the results thereafter were a little wishy-washy, but now she comes to this really, really internationally beloved moment and wins, and now she's right there amongst the names on the tip of your tongue in women's tennis. And I really like to see how quickly that all moved for her in the span of like a week or 2 weeks, coming from Wimbledon, where she wasn't really a factor in the second week, and then to the Olympics, where it's like she leads with a gold medal in the honor of her country in China, and people can't wait to prop her up, you know?
Absolutely. And I think this actually is one of the beautiful things for the Olympics, is that it brings out another side of folks. You know, with tennis, they're competing, you know, week in and week out. But for the most part, and again, you know, we're talking about singles, you know, they're competing for themselves. You know, they're not competing for something bigger like their country. And I really think that you see it from everyone that loses first round, if we're talking about tennis, or losing, you know, kind of in the qualifications and the earlier swim heats, to those that win the gold, you know, win some sort of medal, you know, how much it means. And, you know, I don't know if some of those players would have brought it if it just was another tournament. I think it does bring something else out. And, you know, I'm a huge fan of her. You know, it is interesting if you look back in previous years. You know, you have Monica Pui, you know, who won the gold kind of out of nowhere. She got, you know, really hot, you know, and was never able to fully recapture those type of results. Love her game, love her personality, love her on, you know, tennis channel. So this is not a Monica diss at all. But there also have been a lot of other players who were able to capitalize that. You know, I mean, you have, you know, the Kerbers and the Dementievas and obviously the Williams sisters. We don't even need to bring them up because they, you know, have so many gold medalists. But if we're talking about people that, you know, are they then able to capitalize on this? And I think she will. I think she's going to come to New York with a big smile on her face. I think just perfect timing. I think she's going to come with a lot of confidence. I think, you know, she's going to come rested. And I think she's going to come and believe that she can win this. You know, she has a really tough first round match against Amanda, which I believe is tomorrow. And that's, you know, good. Like, if, you know, like sink or swim, it's first match. I think, you know, she's going to come with confidence. She's going to come to New York ready to go. At least I hope so, because I think she's, you know, I love her game. She's a joy to watch. She always has a smile on her face. Now, I guess, you know, Emma Navarro might disagree with us for whatever reason, because I still don't really understand that. And I actually will say I was at the match against Kerber, which was everything from moonballing 8-year-old, you know, junior tennis to just the most spectacular shot making I've ever seen. I mean, even during some of the points, the crowd was actually laughing because it was just moonball. But then they'd suddenly step up and hit these outrageous. I mean, you were at the edge of your seat. And you know, that was Kerber's last match, and Zhang went in for the hug. She didn't get one from Kerber. It was interesting. So I don't know if there's something else going on in the locker room, but you know, I haven't seen anything.
Maybe people just see a star in the making with Jing Chen-wen and are slow to warm up to it, because, you know, it's taking some of the shine from possibly being on them. Maybe that kind of boils down what I'm saying to jealousy, which I do feel like is something that happens, not to be like, you know, falling on the age-old trope of women always being jealous of each other and men not even being worried about that, because men do experience jealousy. But I do think there's some degree of truth that, you know, the women on the WTA tour kind of want to be in that spotlight. And when they see other people who they think, for whatever their reasons are, they feel like they aren't deserving of it, or they wish it was them or whatever, they do feel a little bit of resentment. And I don't know if that was the case with Jin Chen Wen's run-in with Emma Navarro in her match, or the lack of warmth in the handshake with Kerber. But we don't know until we ask those players. And unfortunately, I don't know if they've been flat out asked, hey, what's that about? If I had the opportunity, I would flat out ask him, hey, what's up with your feelings, or how do you explain your interaction with Jin Chen Wen, who feels like when she comes on the court is a really darn good competitor and is fair to her opponents, but it doesn't feel like she gets that reciprocated back to her. So like, describe that. I don't know. I all in all, I liked watching Jin Chen Wen like really have that moment in the sun, and I'm interested to see if she's going to kind of stay in that moment for a lot longer than some other quote unquote surprise women's singles gold medalists of the past, like you mentioned, Monica Puig, even Belinda Bencic. I'm wondering how that's going to work out for her.
Gosh, forgot about Belinda. Hope she's doing well, but talk about someone I forgot even existed. Bring me back though to the women going at it. Bring me back to that person's ugly inside. Bring me back to the Williams sisters making fun of people that rollerblade. As Martina Hingis talks about how much she loves rollerblading. Bring me back to a little bit of the sauce. I mean, Danielle Collins, this is her last tournament. Or at least I'm not sure if she's retiring after the US Open. I know she's retiring at the end of this year. She belted Iga right in the chest when she was at the net, retires from the mat. And when Iga tries to say, are you okay? Pretty much is just like, don't pretend you're a decent person. You don't give up if I'm okay. So, we haven't seen a lot of that in recent years of tennis, except from a few individuals. But I don't think the new Danielle Collins of honesty is going to be Emma Navarro, but maybe Emma's going to grow a personality, and I'll be interested to watch a match or two. You never know. You never know, Myles. I will say tuned in. I will say tuned into tennis to see if Emma makes me want to turn on a TV.
That's a great way to frame it, because when I already have my television on and they pan to or like give focus to an Emma Navarro match, I can't say that I am left with a bad impression, because technically the tennis is solid. Like she's smooth pretty much from all parts of the court. The game is there. You can tell from seeing bits and pieces of her game when she used to be like a quintessential wild card at the Charleston Open because her dad basically owns the tournament. She definitely has gotten more.
Slide that in.
Well, I mean, I didn't make it up. I did not make it up. She halfway earned those wild cards, halfway benefited from what she benefits from. It's just,
you have the receipts. You have the receipts.
Yeah.
Maybe like Stefanos' younger brother.
Either way, I can see the growth as a player from Emma Navarro, but she isn't to the point yet where I turn on my television to watch the Emma Navarro match. It just kind of happens. It happens in happenstance, and I'm wondering if she's going to lean into that. I don't necessarily want her to lean into that by causing friction between players when there really isn't any organically, which is kind of how that incident with Chen Wen kind of happened, or that's how it felt. But if she's going to be around about the top ranked women singles player on the WTA tour, I mean, hey, give me a reason to watch besides just a smooth backhand and a solid service motion. Like, those are great things to have if I'm coaching her, but like from the entertainment perspective, I want just a little bit more. But I also want you to be authentic. So if you're just not the girl that is a leading actress and you're more of the supporting star, be that too. So I just, there's somewhere in the middle is where I hope she lands when it's all said and done.
Or maybe not even a supporting. She's like a character actress. She's not even up to a supporting actress yet. But no, that's exactly right. Which is, all these folks are human beings. All these folks have to be their authentic selves. Of course, we as fans, want, kind of like Gladiator, like, are you not entertained? You know what I mean? Like, so that it is tough, and it's, it's a little unfair to say, disparaging or negative things about someone when it's just like, hey, like I'm working my ass off. I'm in the gym 4 days, 4 hours a day. I'm on the practice court 6 hours a day, and I'm doing my job and I'm doing it really well. And just because I don't fist bump, enough or, that like I'm bad. That said, if we are literally just talking about, who are you, especially during the Australian Open, for that night match that starts at 3:30 in the morning East Coast. I'm in DC, you're in Atlanta. Like who are we getting up for? And it doesn't make people less than. They're just in today's game. For me, there are just less of those people that I am, really setting my alarm for at 3 a.m. Again, that doesn't mean those people are bad. I know I'm sounding a little negative here, but if we look at the men and the women and who's really at the top, I know your favorite player is Ribs. I know every time Rybakina is playing, you are just running down the street to see that, that Ice Princess type thing. But
I have to do a compilation of what I've put out into the world that makes that like a very easy marker for everybody to tell me that I am not a fan of Ribs. But you're not wrong. But I think it's funny that people just like, yeah, Myles hates Rybakina. I'm like, hate is a strong word.
You never said the word hate. And maybe I actually just took something out of a private phone conversation and put it all over the internet. But you are the host, so you do have editing control over this. But yeah, it just comes down to, at the end of the day, this is sport. It's entertaining. And the more people that are entertained are going to want to go to matches. That then breeds money, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, it doesn't, I don't want to, because, of course, I'd love to work for the WTA. So maybe I should frame this as these are ways we could help you. But, when there seemed to be this marketing machine behind you, that gets interesting compared to, the ATP. I what they do is brilliant and all their different, if you saw lately, they were pranking all these players where they'd go to the elevator and an elevator would open and be someone on a toilet or, just some things that are quirky and memorable,
something that makes you something that stands out amongst the vast plane of what you're seeing on your phone and on your internet all the time. That's what the ATP and equivalently tennis TV has been doing. But I really hope that one day tennis TV is able to merge with WTA so we can get a little bit of that sauce, because the tennis TV is like, whether you are subscribed to them or not, just a quick follow of tennis TV on socials gives you a glimpse into what's happening year round into tennis. And the WTA, unfortunately, is not a part of that glimpse, or is rarely a part of that glimpse, because they just don't have the contract with tennis TV, which is unfortunate. So, especially considering at one point they did.
Pretty much is the WTA championships has pretty much been one big GoFundMe page. That's pretty much why they're building a stadium on a Cancun beach 4 hours before players, but so they've gone from a GoFundMe page to selling out to Saudi Arabia. So, I guess that's for another day.
Yeah, let's switch gears a little bit and get to North America, where we are gearing up for the last Grand Slam of the year. But before we get into that, let's talk about how things have been set up before play goes live in New York. There were 3 main tournaments that kind of served as the lead up, or AKA the US Open Series. By the way, short tangent, RIP or to the US Open Series. I miss when it was an actual thing that ESPN really used to concentrate on, and it felt like players would prioritize. Not that they don't prioritize these warm-ups, but it doesn't have like a full US Open Series kind of feel anymore. It's just like, hey, let's go to North America and get ready for the US Open. Those are two different things. I miss when it felt like, hey, we're gonna go from California to New York and Connecticut and places in between and get people excited for tennis,
Well, this year was tough because they had Paris, obviously.
True.
But to your point, I mean, there used to be all those, in Southern California, there were multiple, tournaments. Those went away. There was one in New Haven that was always the week before, for, WTA. that went away. For a while they were talking about Cincinnati going to Winston-Salem, so it's, yeah. And then, I remember, I think, I'm not
Wait,
sure
you mean Charlotte?
Yeah, sorry.
Charlotte,
Yeah, same. It's all
Carolina?
the same down there. But
I'm sure there's somebody from Charlotte or from North Carolina that doesn't appreciate that, but
well, you know what? Put a comment, put a comment, put a like, we'll get some traction on social. But what was I going to say? We're going to have to edit this part out. Oh yeah, no, remembering.
No, we like brain farts. Brain farts are
yeah,
normal.
right. No, when like there was the whole race to the U.S. Open, and if you won the series, and you won the U.S. Open, I forget if they doubled it or they added, but I remember, the year Kim Clijsters won the U.S. Open, her paycheck went from like $1 million to $2 million because she'd won that race. So agree that in the last few years they've gotten away from it. So yeah, no, I think anything that's promoting the sport, anything that's getting rackets in kids' hands. And what I think they did a great job this year, Myles, is this whole fan week. This last week, I don't remember every single day on ESPN2 them showing qualies. I don't remember, them doing such a push to get fans there, giving away free rackets. Kudos to the USTA. Kudos to, the folks that were in that room that said, hey, let's turn this 2-week event into a 3rd week. That is, maybe I've been under a rock and they've been doing that for years. But this year I took up and noticed, and I thought that was just awesome.
No, you're definitely on alone. I definitely feel like there's been a really, really good push this year to incentivize. Is that the right word I want to use?
Yeah, incentivize. Well, you finish the sentence and then I can tell you if that was the right word.
Incentivize people actually getting to the U.S. Open, getting on buses, trains, subways to actually go and experience the U.S. Open more than just watching it on television, and doing so by either making things free or really, really cheap, and also getting to benefit from like the stars that you would see from that first or second week at the tournament being there for these really open and accessible events for the public. I love that. It really felt like, hey, like, I don't think it's lost on both of us that it didn't feel like that in previous years. Whereas this year, it felt like we really want you guys to kind of reinvigorate this tournament, which has always been good. But let's face it, we're on the other side of a Roger and Rafa world and a Venus and Serena world. And there has been, although people are like maybe playing tennis more because it was one of the sports that you could play safely during the pandemic, I feel like tennis felt a nudge in that. At the same time, the entertainment value of the sport from sports viewing and watching and kind of huddling around a television, that over the past couple of years has actually declined because the people that were at the core of us watching have declined as well, naturally, with just how sports has a cycle. So I really feel like I appreciate the US Open for doing what they've done this week to try to, even if it's not some huge payout at the end, or like, we see some huge spike in viewing numbers, at least tennis fans, diehards like us, can say, hey, like, we're really feeling like they're putting tennis on the forefront and making people care. And in order to make people care, you have to show your product. And for the first time in a long time, it feels like they're showing the product not just hours before the first match of the tournament starts. A whole week is like, hey, this US Open is happening. If you're not in New York, you can at least get a slice of the pie here on television. And if you really, really are interested in what you see, you can get your butt down there either by the end of fan week or the beginning of the first day of the tournament. So I really, really did appreciate that. That's something I want to see them keep doing, and especially with the push in like digital content. I mean, if you're subscribed to US Open on YouTube, following them on Twitter or Instagram, you're getting quite a bit all over your phone and devices about what the US Open is doing. So for that, they get a bunch of claps for me for that, for sure.
Yeah, no, I felt my phone was just heating up between all the tennis and USTA and ESPN. Obviously Kamala texted me every 5 seconds. Tim Waltz, every 5 seconds. I felt really popular until that it was like, oh no, that's just Kamala again. Oh no, that's just another ESPN alert about, Eubanks on court 25. But yeah, no, I'd love to see them continue that. I really wish that they could bring those US Open ticket prices down, because it feels like a little bit of like either you can afford a $300 ticket or you can't, and that's just a lot of money. But again, we already talked about that earlier, so no reason to go back in. But yeah, to you getting back to these warm up tournaments. We saw some new players kind of win tournaments that we haven't seen step up before, and then a little bit of the old guard coming back, where you have Korda and DC. It's been a minute since we saw him.
Is Korda part of the old guard?
No, I was gonna no. I was gonna say Pegula Sabalenka. I guess I wouldn't call it the old guard, just the person.
Old reliables, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably better. So it'll be, because Pegula is an interesting quarter of the US Open. I don't, even though she played well against Sabs, got to the final and all that, I don't see her winning the tournament. Not to go too far into it, but I don't know. It was good to see some people try to get back out there. Obviously, Sabalenka had to, get out of, retire from Wimbledon, and then she was able to get it back. And then we have, as you're saying here, Sebastian Korda. Unfortunately, I couldn't go to the tournament because I wasn't in town, but it was good to see an American win an American tournament.
Yeah, and that was Sebastian Korda's biggest trophy lift of his career, and kind of a reintroduction, if you will, to like, hey, I'm a 20-something, not even 25 yet. I'm in the kind of conversation with Ben Shelton and Francis Tiafoe and Taylor Fritz and Tommy Paul. Like, I'm right there with those guys. Those guys look at me as a potential threat to maybe lift some of the biggest titles in the world. I personally kind of had relegated him to second or third tier, because he just I mean, I know that sounds kind of rough, but he hadn't done anything to keep me interested, and not all of that is his fault. Injuries are a part of the game, and you definitely have to kind of ride the wave as they show their ugly head, and he dealt with his fair share. But I feel like his run in DC to that title, he also followed up with a semifinal run, I believe, in Canada, losing to eventual champion Alexei Popyrin, which is another person that's like, hey, don't forget about me. I'm a 20-something. I'm not a part of the US brigade, but like I hit a big ball. I am not going anywhere in my career anytime soon. In this post Big Three world that we're getting more and more accustomed to, I can have my say on the day. And I think that's been a trend, like you say, of this US Open warm-up North American hardcourt swing. Like, there's been some names that have been more reliable over the past couple of years, like Pegula lifting the trophy in Canada, Sabalenka in Cincinnati. But like Sebastian Korda, Alexei Popyrin on the men's side, players that you almost sort of forgot about or really didn't think of in the mix, are like, hey, like if these big guys like Djokovic are prioritizing the gold medal every 4 years, like they have their right to, you're going to leave me here and I'm going to take advantage of what's across the net for me. And I feel like Sebastian Korda is the perfect example of that. I'm not betting that he's going to be like, US Open favorite and lifting the US Open in 2 weeks. I'm not saying that, but like, he's similar to what I was saying about Emma Navarro a couple of minutes ago. He's not somebody that I turn on my television for yet. But if it's on and they pan or focus on his matches, I'm quite impressed with like the package, the overall package that I see from him. And he's one of those players that if you're not on your game and he's on his, he's gonna make himself a tough out if he's healthy and playing well. So I don't know how you feel about Korda specifically.
I know you're a big fan of a good package, so I can appreciate you liking that, and let's just hope that Sebastian Korda doesn't, do what his father did and get, win a couple titles and then get positive for doping too, which I don't know if we're going to touch the doping this podcast.
We can, you know what? Let's touch on to that. Let's touch on it for a second, and then we can go into what I really want us to kind of, get our big predictions on about, which is the day one schedule of the US Open, which is happening in like 12 hours from now, 24 hours from now. They're going to be playing out in Queens. What are your like big takeaways, if you have any, from the most recent tennis doping scandal involving Jannik Sinner, world number 1 and U.S. Open top seed.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's interesting when you start going down, looking at other people. Oh, I didn't dope. It must have fallen in my pasta. Oh, I didn't, take cocaine. I was making out with a stripper. Oh, I didn't dope. There must have been a spray on a cut that then went to a finger that went to a massage. Now, that said, I thought Renee Stubbs said something pretty interesting a couple days ago, which is like, we have experts in these worlds, and multiple experts have cleared him and said that this is okay. And I was talking about my favorite players that do believe in science. So I guess I need to probably then believe the scientists as well. I think it's just a huge shame that, you have some players that are able to afford to fight these charges. He was able to, probably rightfully so, clear his name because he has the resources to hire legal counsel. He has the resources to figure out how to navigate this world. And by this world, I mean, the legal system and, what's happening with all the different, federations and agencies, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm willing to, believe it. Kind of looking at some other players, I'm going to specifically say Andy Roddick, who's been very clear on this issue that he believes Sinner. And when you actually look at the trace amounts and kind of those other things that, he believes him to be clean. It's just such a bummer though, when you have someone maybe like a Simona Halep who it's announced. So right away, her reputation is tarnished, whether it's rightfully so or not even going to get into that, and then she's suspended for 2 years, which then she ends up being cleared. So then they backdate it, but, her career is almost kind of over. And so, for him, they don't announce it. He keeps going on his, so it's just really unfortunate. And you never want the number one in your sport to bring this type of attention to the sport. We're saying we want more people to watch the U.S. Open, but we don't want more people to be paying attention to it because they wonder if our sport is clean. So it's just all really unfortunate. But gosh, your massage therapist has a cut. So he took a spray on his cut and then he massaged you, and that's how it came in. They were asking Darren Cahill, how did this person, so I think it was his, kind of with his physio, and he got the spray from somebody else. And they kept just saying, and the guy had the spray for personal reasons. And they're like, well, why did he have it? And they're like, oh, well, we don't know that. Wouldn't that be the first question you asked? Wouldn't you be like, why did you have that spray?
The plot thickens when you realize that the same physiotherapist who's at the center of this Jannik Sinner situation has also been in a very similar situation with the same performance-enhancing metabolite clostebol with a basketball player also of Italian heritage, and that Italian basketball player had to do like a 1-year suspension for testing positive for that performance-enhancing drug in being in the system. Although, like you said, the experts have said that Jannik Sinner bore no negligence and did not intentionally do this. And, the amount or whatever they say wasn't enough to kind of warrant a immediate long-term suspension. Because he was provisionally suspended. He was provisionally suspended. I want to keep that in the conversation. He was provisionally suspended twice because he tested positive twice in Indian Wells, but they were very short, like a matter of 1 day at a time, and then a couple of days for the second time. He didn't get all of that in the public eye. It happened behind closed doors, and it just so happened that those suspensions lined up to where he wasn't playing actual tournaments in the first place. So a lot of this is luck. A lot of this, like you said earlier, is because he had the resources to kind of, quickly get rid of this, it seems. But when I leave this situation, I feel like when I'm leaving the door, hypothetically, I'm like, this whole situation feels much different than how past situations have kind of flowed with performance enhancing drugs in tennis, and it just doesn't feel right. So it's going to be interesting to see how Sinner plays the next 2 to 3 weeks of his career with this over his head, if it affects him, and kind of how it affects him for the rest of his career. Because for the first 4 years of knowing Jannik Sinner, he's been like the most middle of the road. Like, we see all this talent in him, but not really a guy that you associate with scandal. And this is a pretty large one for more reasons than just performance enhancing drugs. It's a scandal because of how it was dealt with by the powers that be in tennis. And that's where a lot of people are kind of speaking out like, hey, this situation where it kind of all happens under wraps, and then we're slapped in the face with like, oh, situation's done. It's been handled after he's been playing for the past 6 months and no one knew about it. That doesn't happen to the rest of the players. And I feel like that is what needs to change in tennis and what's going to be the forefront of the conversation moving forward. So, yeah.
And I think that's the perfect distinction, Myles, which is being upset with the situation or unhappy with the situation. And where is it Sinner's fault or his camp's fault? And then where is it the system? And kind of what you're talking about there is the system, versus the actual player. Because are you kidding me? If all of us, when we find ourselves in a situation that is uncomfortable, we try to handle it as best as we can. And you're going to work that system, so yeah. And again, it's funny that I didn't know you were going to bring up Korda with the picture. So I just keep thinking of, Peter Korda, who, won the Australian Open. You have this player that weighs 8 pounds, and yet he has some biggest power you've ever seen. Then he tests positive after he wins his Grand Slam. I mean, does Sinner weigh 160 soaking wet? And he's, has some of the big, his last year, again,
speculation. It's just there's just some question marks. Yeah, we're throwing some stuff. there's question marks.
I don't think it's going to affect him. I think he came out to huge applause while he was practicing on Arthur Ashe the other day. I think now he's already spoken to the media once. I'm sure that was a huge relief. I think he gets down to business. I think this isn't for sure in the future. I don't think it's going to impact him at all. Let's see, though, if he still is powerful. If suddenly his serve isn't 130 miles an hour, he might have to go get a massage with the stripper that Gasquet was making out with.
Yikes, how we tied all that together. All right. Okay, let's tie in some very pertinent matches on the cards for tomorrow. Let's pull up our order of play here at the U.S. Open. Opening day, Monday, August 26, 2024. I'm going to start off at the bottom at don't make a joke there, Brennan. I know it's on the tip of your tongue. Let's see if I can zoom in here.
Set it up.
I lined it up for you, didn't I?
I thought you usually were going to go for the top, but hey, sometimes...
hey, people like climbing trees these days, so hey, I'll leave it there.
Keep us guessing,
I'll leave it there. Okay, let's start sharing this screen and get into Court 17 opening day at the U.S. Open. By the way, Court 17, the 2 times I've been to the U.S. Open, has absolutely been my favorite court. Not to knock on Arthur Ashe and Armstrong and Grandstand, the 3 biggest actual short course, but Stadium 17 is the 4th biggest and the most intimate. It has a very deep, sunken into the ground feel. It just, I enjoyed the vibe, and it may have been because I saw Raducanu play on that stadium, and she went on to win the U.S. Open. Who knows? Maybe that's what it is. Not that I'm like Raducanu's #1 fan or anything like that, but just something memorable at the U.S. Open. Okay, from this list of
there was a lot of detail about Court 17. I mean, it sounds like
I enjoyed it.
Podcast just about Court 17. Holy hell!
I enjoyed it. It's memorable. Okay, Court 17, 11 a.m. start in Queens, New York is going to open up with Maria Sakkari versus Wang Yifan. Any immediate reaction?
Yawn.
All right. Casper Ruud versus I'm going to butcher this guy's
The
I
person
guess
from
that's
China.
his given name. Yeah, a very staunch competitor from China. Casper Ruud and Maria Sakkari being on court 17 back to back are interesting because they both have not quite shown up for the biggest matches that they've been offered in their career. So that'll be interesting to see. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them, probably Sakkari, is either really tested to the point that she's out or just kind of gets out early, because her track record at Grand Slams over the past couple of years has not been great. But if you're a Sakkari fan and just happen to be listening to this, make sure you go out early in Stadium 17 to go root your girl on. Following those two matches is one that I think we're going to stop and talk about for just a second. Taylor Townsend of the United States, who's having her best season, has knocked herself into the top 50 in the WTA rankings, is facing Martina Trevisan, former French Open semifinalist from a year or two ago, I believe. So what are your thoughts on that match?
Words I bet you never thought you'd say.
About her being a semifinalist?
Yeah, French Open, right.
Oh, yeah. I mean, hey, she was a quarterfinalist a couple years before that. So, I mean, you know, that tournament has its ways of offering wild results. But, I mean, I think if we had tickets to opening day, I feel like we'd make our way to that court to watch that match. What are you thinking about that match, just from reading it off
and
the screen?
I said yawn with, Maria. I actually, really like her. Her game is great. She, competes from the first to the last, ball. Wish she could figure out, the mental side of it. But, more times than not, I'm rooting for Sakkari to get through. Casper, he's another one I saw up close and personal at the French Open. Woo! It's nice. I'll put it that way. And TT, I was actually at Wimbledon, saw her win the women's doubles final, and
huge for her.
That's great to see. And she stayed. Both her and Suniakova stayed for a while after taking pictures with the fans. They were taking selfies. Gosh, I love her. Gosh, she is fun. And this is going to be, a tough match. I just, if you are going out there to court 17, you might need to bring some of those noise canceling headphones for Trevisan, because holy mother of God, does she screech and scream, and it's after she hits the ball. But, Taylor's been playing outrageously well. So I think that's going to be a good match. You and I go back on, betting on some matches. So I'm definitely picking Taylor, with hopefully, the home crowd coming out to support her, which I think they will.
I hope they do too. I hope she takes advantage of how she's kind of built momentum for her this summer. And I hope the crowd takes advantage of a really good spot in the U.S. Open, Billie Jean King National Tennis Center. I feel like, they've intentionally put her in a space where the crowd could get active in that match and really kind of lighten up the vibe, or, if she's down, kind of help rile her up. So I hope it doesn't get to that point, but if it does, I like Taylor's shot. And then the last match on Stadium 17 is Holger Rune of Denmark, the 15th seed, versus USA's Brandon Nakashima, who's made a little bit of noise this year, beating Taylor Fritz in Cincinnati. And it's kind of been one of those guys that has been on the second or third tier of like 20-something next gen, kind of sort of going to do something, but hasn't really broke through the ceiling. And then Holger Rune is somebody that's been massively talked about for the past year or two, but is kind of, in my opinion, regressed. I mean, his seeding here kind of shows that, because at one point he was within the top 10 seeds, and now he comes here at 15 in the world. So that'll be something to watch. Not quite sure how that's going to play out. That's a banana peel match for Holger Rune. If he's not sharp, I think Nakashima has the goods to get him out of there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if I was going to this court, I would have, showed up for Casper, taken a couple of pictures of his butt, walked around, back for the entire Taylor match, stayed for Holger, taking a couple of pictures of the thighs, maybe stay for the first set, maybe not, and then I'd head off to see where else. So there's a lot of eye candy on this court today. So that's
fair enough.
That's my big takeaway from the stadium.
All right, let's go to, where do we want to go? Let's pick another court that I think might get interesting. Dun, dun, dun. Do you want to go to grandstand and just kind of see what's popping over there? Because that's the third biggest court. Let's see what's grandstand happen tomorrow. Well, yeah, you know what? Let's go over there because there's some interesting matchups that are going to happen there. It starts with, let's get this showing on the screen. It starts early at 11 a.m. with a matchup with number 4 seed and former U.S. Open finalist Alexander Zverev taking on lucky loser, a current German mate, I guess, of his, who I've not really seen play too much.
I think we can't we actually refer to Zverev as a lucky loser, considering the fact he pretty much lost his German battery case and somehow was able, to get lucky. He would claim that he won it, but I'm pretty sure that's not accurate.
Yeah, he's been lucky for the past couple of years because those accusations over his head really haven't stopped him from doing much, really. So,
well, I mean, which accusations from which women is the thing, but
that's also fair.
We digress.
I think he should be, comfortable in that matchup, and I think he likes the conditions at the U.S. Open. He's been to a semifinal, a final, obviously. So again, he's not somebody that we collectively root for with a lot of fervor, but tennis player, darn good that he is. That's followed by Paula Badosa, who I didn't mention a couple minutes ago when we were talking about the lead up to the U.S. Open, but she was the women's singles champ in D.C. So she's been showing some good form. I also think she made the semifinals of Canada. Yes, she made the semifinals of Canada and lost to eventual champion Pegula. So this is the best she's looked in quite a long time, especially considering before the North American hardcourt swing started, she was nowhere near contention to be seated at the U.S. Open, and here she comes seated 26. So that's good. That's good momentum that she has coming in, and a lot of people have her as like a dangerous, dark horse to kind of do some damage at the U.S. Open. Do you agree with that, or where do you fall on the Badosa?
Yeah, I really like Badosa. It's just it's hard to know if she's going to go out there and lose 2 and 3 or win 3 and 2. And I kind of doubt her judgment if she thinks Stefanos is the way to go. But I like her judgment on the court. So I'm a big Paula fan. She's had some injuries, so love to see her on the upswing. And for me, this next match is a match I'm really excited about. I think we all know Diego is retiring after this U.S. Open. He actually had to qualify, so it was great to see him do this. And Monfils, what can you say about him? He's just so entertaining, so talented, and another eye candy as well. So I hope that match is good. Hopefully, Diego is, he's going to have to, I think this is going to be entertaining no matter what happens. So I definitely would be running to grandstand if I was there tomorrow or today. I'm not sure when you're releasing this, Myles.
Fair enough. And then to close out the session, you get 3-time U.S. Open finalists and always a crowd favorite, Victoria Azarenka, closing out the grandstand session against Yulia Starobutseva of Ukraine. Don't know much about her opponent, but Azarenka shows up for the U.S. Open almost every year that she gets an opportunity to, and I don't think this one is going to be different, although she does kind of bring in some injury concerns. She put out at Cincinnati with the injuries. So we'll see how geared up she is for this year's U.S. Open. All right, before we go to Arthur Ashe, which is the creme de la creme, there are some very interesting matches happening on Louis Armstrong Stadium. We kind of teased this one at the beginning of our conversation when we talked about Olympic gold medalist Zheng Chenwen. She takes on Amanda Anisimova, who's been having a resurgence in her own right. That's an 11 a.m. start on Louis Armstrong. That is definitely going to be a match that I am geared up to watch because I like big babe tennis, something that Mary Carrillo coined, and I like both of those women. I feel like they are easy to root for in their own rights. That's followed up with Taylor Fritz versus a competitor that I don't know much about from Argentina, Camila Ugo Carabelli. Good luck to Taylor Fritz. Taylor Fritz, not calling for an upset here at all, but Taylor Fritz does have a little bit of work to do, in my opinion, to be like a guarantee at the slams. He's done some other work. He's gotten to quarterfinals, but I do think the Grand Slam stage is proven to be where he doesn't play his best. And, you know, he has quarterfinal points to defend here this year. So hopefully he starts off his campaign with a solid win over an opponent on paper he should beat. And another person that does bring their best to the Grand Slams and kind of elsewhere happens, you know, whatever happens on WTA Tour happens for her, but she's been known to bring some of her best tennis to the U.S. Open, and that's Madison Keys, 14 seed, versus Olympic gold medalist in mixed doubles, who we mentioned earlier in the show, Katerina Siniakova. That could be a fun little matchup there. What do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Siniakova, you know, teamed up with Taylor Townsend to win the doubles, women's doubles at Wimbledon as well. So, you know, to say that she's had a good couple months is an understatement. Yeah, you know, we've already talked about that first match on Louis. So, you know, gosh, Madison getting injured at Wimbledon was just heartbreaking to see. You know, she was 5 minutes away from being in the locker room. That, you know, so, and she's just had some really not that injuries are ever well timed, but she's just had some really big injuries at really big stages. So that's a bummer. So I don't know, you know, Siniakova is going to be coming in with a lot of confidence. You know, she's not necessarily also known for, you know, kind of her mental toughness. She kind of can hit a couple bad forehands and, you know, away she goes. So we'll see. I think it's going to be interesting. I do like Madison in that. For sure. But I think that could be also an upset. So I just talked up both sides.
It could be, yeah. Yeah. I could see Madison Keys being comfortable in that matchup, and just because of the injuries and kind of lack of form coming into the U.S. Open, and where Siniakova has it, it could be a kind of a mild upset. We'll see. And then the night session at Louis Armstrong is going to be headlined by fan favorite Frances Tiafoe, coming off of his first trip to a Masters 1000 tournament in Cincinnati. No, I should reframe that. That was his first trip to a Masters 1000 final in Cincinnati, Frances Tiafoe. He takes on fellow American Alexander Kovacevic, and then that's followed by heavy favorite for the women's title. Last year's runner-up, Aryna Sabalenka, takes on qualifier from Australia, Priscilla Hahn. I feel like both of those are very workable matches for both of those fan favorites, and I would expect to see victory from Frances and Aryna. Aryna probably more handedly, because Priscilla Hahn doesn't have the weaponry. And Frances, yeah, I mean, Frances can make his matches either interesting or, you know, kind of be a little wayward in the focusing department. That's something he's never really shied about, or like his contemporaries and coaches have never shied about being honest about. But I do think he's the heavy favorite for that match, just because Kovacevic has never really, you know, started up well at slams, whereas Tiafoe has made it to the second weeks a couple of, you know, more than a couple of times in his career now. So, and Tiafoe just quite frankly likes the U.S. Open, and the U.S. Open likes him. It's like his perfect playground. So I'm excited to see what he does. I was
exactly about to say that. New York, Ash at night, Tiafoe. But yeah, it'll. Yeah. I think that'll be really fun to watch and have him soak it in. It's great to see him, you know, coming, you know, up on the upside again.
Yeah, because it's been a rough 2024 for him, and I feel like he's rounding into form just at the right time, which is good to see. We'll see what happens. All right, we're going to cap off our conversation with a look at what's happening on Arthur Ashe Stadium. Is this? Yeah, this is the draw for Arthur Ashe Stadium. Let me go ahead and show it. I was worried for a second. I was like, is this Tuesday or Monday? But no, this is Monday. It'll be opened up. I think this is huge for Ben Shelton to literally be the opener of play on the biggest stadium in the world at the last Grand Slam, his home Grand Slam. Ben Shelton takes on Dominic Thiem on Arthur Ashe with a 12 p.m. start. We've talked about it a little bit earlier. Dominic Thiem is going to be retiring at the end of the year, so this is his last Grand Slam. It's kind of sad because he won that 2020 U.S. Open amidst no fans, basically nothing at all in the pandemic year, and then 3 seasons later, he is, you know, calling it quits because his body just hasn't been able to take the injuries that he's been through, and he just really hasn't been the same player since that moment. Whereas Ben Shelton is kind of, we didn't even know who Ben Shelton was in 2020, and now he is number 13 seed and opening up Arthur Ashe Stadium. So kind of a nice blend of, not to call Dominic Thiem a has-been, but unfortunately the sport does, it's kind of unforgiving, and then Ben Shelton is the right now. So that's an interesting matchup. And they've actually played at the US Open. I believe they played just last year, and I want to say Dominic Thiem retired at a certain point in that matchup. So maybe that's an interesting dynamic. Dominic Thiem wants to go out there and give it his all and get the upset. Who knows?
Ben hasn't exactly been lighting up the stat sheet with victories.
True,
true. And he's also someone that really feeds off the crowd, and the crowd really feeds off him. I think this is going to be a really tough ask, for Thiem, but if Dominic can get his shoes on to be running back and forth and getting a lot of balls, his track shoes, that's the word I was looking for, who knows, it's going to be the first match on Art Ashe on day one. So there's not going to be a lot of people in the stadium. And so, that could be interesting. It's now or never for Thiem, and, we will all miss his peach. So I think we all can, do an RIP for that.
We could do that. Someone who I think we're both pretty big on, but also, fairly critical of, because heavy is the head that wears the crown, in Coco Gauff, as she is kind of like the face of women's tennis and has been for the past year. After winning the US Open last year, she takes on Varvara Gracheva in her first round of title defense. That seems like an advantageous matchup for her. Gracheva's not a bad player at all, but doesn't really have the weapons that have typically shown themselves to bother Coco. I've been watching some practice sessions of Coco. She seems in a pretty healthy space, although her results coming in have not been the healthiest. I do think she'll get a little bit of a boost from being in a place that was so good to her just 12 months ago. Hopefully that's how that goes, but you never know. You got to go out there and lace them up. Good luck, Coco. We're rooting for you. We're definitely rooting for you to turn some things around and kind of leave the US Open with some of the same momentum you left it with last year. And on to the
I hope she kind of gets that clarity back. I feel, almost starting, the loss to Iga at the French Open semis is where she started to lose this clarity of what type of player I am. I know that they, Brad Gilbert talked about wanting to take it to Iga, but it was like she was going for winners on every return or every second ball. And then, I think she then maybe that second set, she got it a little bit back because she realized, but, she's not a player. I mean, she's obviously a power player, but like she needs to add some of that grinding in. And so I felt like she kind of started to, leaving that match. It was like, oh, shoot, I don't know who I am. And they got to Wimbledon, and just completely fell apart as far as not knowing what to do, was constantly looking at the coach's box, like literally being like, what do I do? What do I, so it'd be good if just kind of this idea of, hasn't necessarily been the best year, but she's getting to slam, semis. And so, yeah, she hasn't won it, but the clarity of, of remember who you are and all of that, and away you'll go. Hey, Myles, my computer is about to die. You can edit this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I have to go get my plug. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Do your thing. All right. Brennan's back from his short stint with a Diet Coke and a computer charger. What were you saying about Coco?
No, just was saying, starting, I felt like she really, lost her way and, lost the clarity of kind of who she was as a player starting, in that French Open semi against Iga, just trying to bash the ball, everything being winners. Then going into Wimbledon, you really saw, especially, in her loss to Emma, she just kept looking up and asking Brad at her coaching box, what should I do? I don't know what to do. And, again, there was a little, she didn't really used to do that a lot. She, she while, you know, I overall tend to like some of the coaching in the game, you know, it's up to her. She's the one on the coach. She has to figure it out. And for her just to be so lost, you know, we're just not used to seeing that from Coco. So hoping now, getting back to the US Open, she's a defending champion. You know, every single person is going to be rooting for her. She'll feel that energy. I hope it, you know, kind of calms her down. Because again, it hasn't been the year she probably wanted, but it certainly hasn't been a bad year. She's, you know, she's the 3rd seed. So, you know, let's go Coco. Let's go US.
Let's go Coco. Leaning into somebody who I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to watch some of this player's old, fresh onto the tour highlights. And I'm speaking of Sloane Stephens, who opens up Arthur Ashe prime time at 7 p.m. She'll be taking on Clara Burrell. And I say that because I do think Coco Gauff has the legs similar to Sloane Stephens to extend points and really make them athletic. And kind of, I do agree with you saying that she's kind of in that gray area of, am I going to be a person that really takes the rack out of my opponent's hand, or am I going to massage the point a little bit, and when there's an opening, slap winners, which I think at Sloane Stephens' best is what she does. Unfortunately, Sloane Stephens hasn't been at her best in a little while, but I do like that the U.S. Open and USTA has given her a shot to kind of, you know, maybe relive some of her glory days and be on the biggest stage where she's won her biggest title, as she was a 2017 U.S. Open champion. So she'll be opening up the night session. And I mean, you know, her opponent, Clara Burrell, is not a slouch, but Sloane Stephens has lost to worse, I think, like just statistically speaking. So hopefully she feels some kind of mojo at being back at a place that was good to her, and Sloane Stephens comes out and at least puts on a good performance, because we know sometimes the performances that she shows out can be a little head scratching. Hopefully that's not the case, but Sloane Stephens has put herself in a situation where you just don't know, honestly, if I'm just being honest. But I do appreciate the fact that they're putting her in that situation. Some people have said that maybe she's like thinking about retirement, so they're trying to put her on a major platform to kind of, you know, give her flowers, so to speak. I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but we shall see.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell you what to expect from that match. I couldn't agree with you more. I love seeing her name to open up the U.S. Open on Ashe. I think that's great. You know, she's, you know, a previous champion here and has been one of the, you know, the best Americans, and for, you know, sometimes some of the, you know, best players in the world. Love her. And I have to think the night at Ashe intensity will help her, and energy will help with that intensity, you know, versus court. Now I was going to say court 17, but we know you love court 17. So we'll say court 13.
That's
you know,
fine.
so I think this is going to be a match where, you know, my brain is going to say Burrell, you know, Clara, and my heart will say Sloane. So we'll see. And then obviously, you know, we have, you know,
Mr. 24.
Mr. Troy,
closing out the night, the electric Novak Djokovic, defending champ.
I just like, you know, there was that quote from his parents a bunch of years ago, how they truly believe that he is God's chosen one. I mean, if we had a list of all the quotes that come out of that family, it's batshit, to say the least. Whether it be Nigel Farage or whether Crazy Pants, but maybe they're right, because this man does a rain dance and continues to get very advantageous draws at Grand Slams. And this is another year where he has one. And so, I mean, I saw that he's actually not even going to be playing with the knee brace on. So again, I guess those crystals work. You know, who needs antibiotics when you
mean the crystals that he like tapes to his chest in the middle of matches? That one, or like the Iron Man thing he does?
No, he actually believes, like, the people that he works with healers and crystals and like special water.
Oh, yeah, when he's like hanging upside down and doing all of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yes. So, you know, kids, if you break a leg, don't go to the hospital. Just buy one of Novak's crystals and you'll be a Grand Slam champ. But yeah, no. So, I mean, he's gonna, if you want to see the matches if you want to see Novak get there early, because I think this is going to be a quick one.
Yeah, he faces Radu Albat, kind of like a journeyman of the tour. You know, not a super impressive resume, so that has a Djokovic win written all over it. So if you're a Djokovic fan, not quite sure how you've made yourself over to this part of the tennis media sphere commentary podcast world, but I appreciate you. We don't have to necessarily like the same players for you to support me, so I appreciate that. But yeah, if you're a Novak Djokovic fan and want to see him in full flight, check out Arthur Ashe night session after Sloane Stephens match. And with that, I feel like we've come to a healthy spot for our discussion to end, Mr. Brennan. I think that, not I shouldn't say I think, I know that I'm very glad that you took the time out to come and chat with me on Tuned Into Tennis. We've had a really good discussion. We've covered quite a lot, and I feel more invigorated than I thought I would be to kind of, you know, enjoy 2 weeks in New York. Even though I won't be there, unfortunately, this year, I'll have 2 televisions, a laptop, and a phone all squared into New York.
That's a lot of electronics. So I can't wait for you to get your electric bill after all that. But no, this has been great. You know, obviously we, you know, crack some jokes at some players' expenses, but you know, these are the hardest working people, you know, tennis individuals that are out there, and the talent that they have, and you know what they have to balance. You know, we'll never know. So some of what I said is tongue in cheek. Other things I do firmly believe, like science. But yeah, no, you know, everyone donate $50 to Kamala and Tim. I think probably should be the big message. But no, Myles, this has been great. Thanks for having me. And, you know, hopefully I behaved myself well enough to get an invite in the future.
In the near future? You
yeah, probably not the near
did.
Future, in the extended future.
You did. I think a lot of the conversations that we have off the record didn't pour themselves into this conversation, which I was kind of nervous about. But you know, hey,
I know.
That's why I keep you around.
I was white knuckling it a couple times, but away we go.
All right, guys, if you're listening to this, please feel free to support Tuned Into Tennis across all social networks. Give us a follow, engage with us, leave your comments about this episode or episodes prior. Also, make sure to rate the show on whatever platform you're listening to this, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever. That definitely helps grow our reach to the show. And if you're listening back on YouTube, or watching back on YouTube, rather, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, because that also helps increase the reach of the show. I appreciate it. Brennan appreciates it. And tennis fans across the world appreciate it. So without further ado, make sure to tune into tennis throughout the next 2 weeks of the US Open. Don't miss what's going on here over in Tuned Into Tennis land. And we will chat on the next show. Thanks again, Brennan. And everyone, take care. Bye.